Long gone are the days when a set of golf clubs simply contained a standard 50-degree pitching wedge and 56-degree sand wedge. In the modern game, there are now a bewildering array of grind, bounce and finish options from wedges lofted 44 degrees all the way to 64. So to cut through the complexity, should your approach simply be to make all your wedges the same? Welcome back to the channel everyone, and in this video our golfing focus is on whether all your wedges should be the same. The short answer is no, golf wedges should not automatically be the same. Wedge lengths, lie angles and shafts are best to keep consistent to deliver good distance gapping, but grinds and bounces are good to vary to help maximise the variety of wedge shots you play. Part of the problem is many golfers get caught up with the seemingly endless options for wedge combinations of bounce, grind, finish, etc. and forget to ask themselves the right practical questions that help them to choose their best wedge setup. So in the rest of this video we'll cut through the jargon and focus on what golfers actually need from their scoring clubs, beyond the question of whether they all should be the same. When golfers ask whether all their wedges should be the same, it helps to first unpack what the same could mean. Often people assume it refers to one club element and overlook the rest. But here are all the different ways you can interpret it in relation to wedges. As we can immediately see, a large number of elements need to be identical for wedges to truly be the same. But here's the key thing. Some of these matter far more than others for performance, especially for regular amateurs. But even before we get into whether your wedges should be the same brand, finish, bounce, grind, length, etc., it's vital to firstly turn your golfing focus to what wedges are actually for, getting the ball in the hole in as few shots as possible, especially from 100 yards in. So the key initial question isn't really should my wedges match, it's do my wedges help me cover the shots I actually face on the courses I actually play. And to help you answer that, the 3 wedge priorities you need to consider before thinking of matching are 1. Where you play most of your golf. 2. Your ability and preferences. And 3. The big one, the yardage gaps between them. Taking where you play first, your wedge setup should reflect your usual conditions. Second, regarding your ability and preferences, consider your wedge strengths and weaknesses first, and again what wedge specs you need to vary versus match will become obvious. If you struggle controlling 3/4 or half swings for examples, and most golfers do, a wedge setup that gives you more stock, repeatable yardages with full swings will usually beat one designed for maximum versatility in theory. And third is the big one, and the single most important factor when it comes to ensuring you have as many bases covered as possible in terms of the variety of wedge shots you can play. The most common reason wedges don't work for amateurs isn't that the bounce or grind or shaft don't match, it's that the distances don't make sense because the loft gaps are wrong. Bob Vokey, one of the world's foremost wedge designers, guidance is a useful starting framework. He likes 4 to 6 degrees between wedges, which often works at around 10 to 15 yards for most male golfers. Female and junior golfers will have 5 to 10 yard gaps by comparison. And now that we've got the real wedge priorities nailed down, we can start talking about the stuff golfers usually mean when they ask, should my wedges match? Brand, head style and finish. There are reasons some fitters like golfers to keep wedges the same brand. Different manufacturers do have their own take on faces, grooves and materials, which does influence spin and carry. So yes, same brand wedges is a smart starting point for testing, especially if you gain confidence from a consistent look and feel. But it's not something to treat like a strict rule. Making all your wedges cavity back or blade style is where matching can matter more, not because it looks tidy, but because different wedge designs suit different roles. A useful way to think about it is, pitching and gap wedges are often full swing clubs. Sand and lob wedges by comparison are often partial swing, bunker and greenside clubs. So for many golfers, especially higher handicaps, cavity back or game improvement style pitching wedge and gap wedges likely make more sense because they're more forgiving and more consistent in fuller swings. Sand and lob wedges are where you can experiment more with specialty or blade type wedges if you actually use them for creativity and have the ability to strike them consistently enough to benefit. Wedge finish by comparison is mostly preference, especially visually, and it shouldn't drive your wedge buying decisions. One of the biggest myths is that rusty or raw wedges automatically create more spin. The truth is, modern laser milled groove and face technology does the heavy lifting now in terms of spin, so the rust equals spin argument is often overstated. That said, raw finishes can have two practical benefits. Number one, less glare in bright sunny conditions, and two, clearer wear marks in the face over time give helpful feedback on strike location. Now what about the two wedge specs golfers seem to talk about the most, bounce and grind? Should they be the same across all your wedges? In short, bounce is the angle created between the leading edge of your wedge and the lowest point of the sole or trailing edge. What does this mean in practice for the average golfer? The short answer is that wedges with different degrees of bounce will work better for different standard players and also in different conditions. And remember too that you affect the bounce of your wedge simply by how you use it. Open the club face up a little, for example, and you're adding a little bit of bounce and loft. Grind, meanwhile, is the shape of the sole of the club and can be changed to adjust how the wedge interacts with the turf by grinding off material from the heel, the toe, the leading edge and the trailing edge. This is why two wedges with the same bounce number can still behave very differently. And if you didn't think already that this was complicated enough, the main manufacturers then use different terminology for their grind options. Unless you're wedge obsessed, therefore, we would suggest you keep things simple when it comes to considering different grind and bounce options, and whether they should all be the same. Always go back to the beginning and start with what conditions you play most of your golf in, your ability and preferences, what wedges give you good distance camping. A single same bounce, same grind everywhere setup can potentially work, but because your wedges often have different jobs, a variety of bounces and grinds are more likely to enable you to hit more types of shots with a wider variety of lies and conditions. And after all the bounce and grind noise, this is the unglamorous bit that often makes the biggest difference to your wedge consistency: length, shaft, especially weight and lie angle. A solid default for most amateurs is simply regarding wedge length. Make them the same length as your shortest iron. If you do start experimenting with the length of your wedges though, remember that you'll also be messing around with the weight, and weight matters a lot. A weight change can lead to ball speed, launch angle, spin rate, ball flight, etc., changing which leads to differences in the results of golf shots. Lie angle then matters because it influences how the sole strikes the ground, which affects strike and direction. The simplest starting point therefore, and what most fitters aim for, is match wedge lie angles to your irons so the clubs sit similarly at address and through impact. All experienced fitters frequently tell stories of finding golfers who have never had any of these three components of their wedges checked and end up playing off-the-shelf lightweight 70-80 gram shafts in their irons, but pro version 120 to 130 gram plus shafts in their wedges. So wherever you are with your wedge choice, get these three, shaft, length and lie angle, aligned first. Then you'll actually be able to judge whether matching or swapping bounces, grinds, brands, finishes, etc. makes any difference. And what about the pros? Are all their wedges the same? Golfing Focus does a yearly deep dive analysis into the wedges PGA Tour players use, and here's a snapshot of how the wedge setup of some of the best in the business matches up. We found plenty of pros' wedges do look to be beautifully matched, same brand, even the same model, but look more closely and they clearly aren't even in these cases. Because the real takeaway is this: pros obsess over their wedge delivering predictable distance numbers across the variety of different around the green situations they find themselves in. And only when matching specific wedge specs delivers this will they bother with it. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Your support makes a huge difference to the channel. Check out our next videos on what clubs the pros are using and if your irons and wedges should match. And as ever, and most importantly, we hope you're enjoying your golf.